All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our last meeting, hopefully, of 2024. I will have our city clerk start with a roll call.
Mayor Kaylee Clark.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Karen Howe.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Sid Gupta.
Here.
Councilmember Roisin O'Farrell.
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Gupta, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Great, thank you. Deputy Mayor Howe, will you lead us in the land acknowledgement?
We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved the treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Great, thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on this one? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we will start with public comment in the room. And even though we do have an unfinished business of the development regulations, since I did close the public hearing last week, if you have public comment for that, go ahead and make it now. David?
Hello. Oh, that's loud. Excuse me. Yes, good evening, council members. My name is David Kyle. I'm the Lake Washington Basin Program Manager from Trout Unlimited. And tonight I'm here to share some exciting and hopeful news for our community and our environment. The Lake Sammamish kokanee salmon are returning in remarkable numbers. This season, over 8,000 kokanee have been observed in the streams and in a dramatic resurgence for this native species. Even more encouraging, the fish are not only numerous, but are large. Are more vigorous and have reached higher areas in our spawning streams than we've seen in the past. This is really exciting for myself, especially. I've seen lows down to 19 fish, which is incredibly depressing. So glad to see 8,000 fish here. A particularly inspiring success story comes from Zacuse Creek. Over 270 kokanee have been recorded there this year. The feat would not have been possible for over 40 years when the stream was blocked by a barrier culvert, which was replaced by the city in the parkway. Thanks to the city's efforts to reconnect the Zacuse Creek, these fish can now have a clear path to their historic spawning grounds. And Trout Unlimited supports this effort by managing the Lake Sammamish kokanee remote stream incubator on Zacuse Creek. And we know from our data from the supplementation program that fish produced in the box went to the lake and actually came back to spawn in the creek. So it's working. It's helping recolonize those streams. However, this year's numbers have also highlighted a critical need. They need more habitat. We've maxed out all of our primary streams. They're basically one giant red from top to bottom. Excuse me. Investing in habitat restoration and connectivity, we can ensure the survival and growth of this iconic species for generations to come. This includes reconnection of streams like George Davis Creek, which would be manageable by these fish to get to spawn there, and it's essential for their recovery. Projects like this demonstrate how proactive, you realize it's a long day today, sorry. How proactive restoration can yield incredible results for our ecosystem and resilience of our wildlife. The return of the kokanee is a testament to what we can accomplish when we prioritize environmental restoration. Let's build on this momentum and continue our commitment to the health of Lake Sammamish and its surrounding streams. Thank you for your continued support and for allowing me to share this exciting news.
Thank you. Fred?
Good evening, Fred Madison here, and thank you for letting me come and speak again. If you recall, we've been here, my wife and I have been here for 45 years, raised our family here. I've been a real estate broker for 45 years and worked with owners to get their entitlements all lined up for development over the last 35 years. So I've worked with lots of owners. There's lots of my fingerprints out there. I want to thank David Pyle for catching me after the last meeting and explaining that even though R4 means 4 units per acre, it can be, the density can be much higher than that with all of the different adds that you can have from ADUs and DADUs and all the different methods for getting there, which will hopefully get some of our housing prices down. I can remember when, prior to Sammamish in this area, it was just, we had a casino down the street for development, and we had to win the water lottery and the traffic concurrency lottery at the same time to develop your property. And it was literally a lottery. It was a gamble. Now we have to deal with water and sewer, critical areas, tree retention ordinances, which are all really great. Let's move ahead on this. I want to thank everyone for the updates that happened since last meeting. I read those not less than 20 times, and it looks like everything is as clean as can be. Let's see what the next two years brings after we put this in, after this passes today, hopefully. And I do support you all voting for that ordinance to pass that. So thank you.
Thank you. Mary?
Hello, Mary Wichter, Sammamish for 24 years. Great news from David Kyle and the Kokanee, go Kokanee. There did used to be 0 on Zaccoose Creek, and then I remember the first year they did the remote site incubator right at 206. They saw 70 fish come back from that because it takes 3 years, and then they didn't see any because the gravel clogged. And then I've been photographing it, it's kind of thinning out, and to see 270 I guess this year so far, and those are just the counts, so that's really awesome. I did want to thank you also for having multiple public hearings that you had a couple times so that people could catch it, come in, and give input. I think that's a really good thing to do. I was also impressed by you were actually listening to the public comment from multiple people, asking good questions on the dais, and that you had the courage to extend it out to this week so that some changes could be made. There's been a lot of code written, and even David Pyle said he was writing really fast stuff this year. So I'm glad that we have that docket in case things need to get changed. Personally, I think the erosion hazard stuff, the definitions got deleted, and when the code got deleted because the stormwater code takes care of it, I think you're going to end up with small lots that don't need a drainage review anymore, and that's where we were in 2013 when the city had those ordinances. But I haven't read the code through to actually see that. I was glad that legal had investigated encumbrance versus constraints. Critical areas really are the constraints, but you can have rules or things on top, so using the word encumbrance is a little bit bigger umbrella, so thank you for that. I looked at the critical areas that you can't, so it's probably okay to be in a critical aquifer recharge area because you just want to not pollute the water, but like streams, wetlands, and landslide hazard areas, you can't be in those. And the 50% number that they put in there, I'm not sure it's a perfect number, but it's halfway between 0 and 100, and I think you could modify that if you needed to. So that all really looked good to me. I didn't see anything in the red line or the clean that really stuck out, but I just wanted to thank you for the process and taking public input, and I think you're getting a better product that will be more useful. And then if it doesn't work for some reason, you have the docket so you can catch those things up, and you might have to do that. That's not a failure. I think that's a good thing. And I love the section 3 where you can, any typos or grammatical errors, they can just be fixed by the city clerk, so we don't have to stand there at the microphone and tell you that. And then the last thing is the city's got a problem where the expenses are going to outgo the incomes. Really, the only tool you have for fixing that is housing. David Pyle said you don't really have to change the growth number, but Paul Stickney and at least 10 other people have spoken to you need to add about 5,000 houses so you can get started on, instead of 85% single family and 15% not, that you could start evening it out with market rate housing. And you're going to need those when we start talking about transfer of development rights and getting connectivity and saving critical areas, and that is starting in January. So thank you very much for everything. Really appreciate all the people coming. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Sam?
evening, council members and city manager. My name is Sam Rodabaugh. I'm a longtime Sammamish resident, and for the last 20 years, I've been a real estate and land use attorney. As far as I'm aware, this is the last city council meeting of the year. Wanted to congratulate the council and also our planning commission on a good year. You have had a lot on your plate. For those of us that are work within the land use context, we understand how difficult it is to do a 10-year comprehensive plan update and associated development regulations. And I wish the general public probably had a greater understanding as to what a heavy lift that this is. I've had an opportunity to review the site-specific rezone criteria that have been revised this week. I'm grateful that the concerns that were raised have been responded to. I fully support those criteria as drafted and hope that you will adopt them as is. The next thing that I would say is I believe at some point early in the new year, you will be revisiting your permit fee, your fee schedule in general. We've endeavored to make these site-specific rezone criteria be very straightforward, very understandable, and to make their application understandable. And for that reason, I would urge you, when you consider your fees, for the fee to be imposed for a site-specific rezone to be a reasonable fee. Obviously, it's quasi-judicial, which means that it goes to the hearing examiner, and that needs to be taken in consideration. But I recently had a client that informed me that the total of her invoices for a shoreline variance here in the city of Sammamish was $28,000. And that's for the ability to build a home that is about as small of a footprint as you can have. And a project like that is hard to pencil out when you're paying that much in permit fees. And when we talk about affordable housing, permit fees are simply a cost that gets added, right, in what it costs to build a home. And so I'd urge you to be reasonable in that. It's when someone comes in at that next phase of development and actually applies for a short plat or a plat that obviously the city's review is much more intense. There's much more to review, and I understand that those permit fees would be significantly higher. But for a site-specific rezone, I urge you to keep that affordable and straightforward, as I think it's one aspect that may assist as we're trying to work through the housing constraints that we have in the city. Again, appreciate all of your work and the wonderful year that you've had, and appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who want to make comment? All right, did we have anyone sign up?
If you would like to comment and you had pre-registered, please raise your hand for online comment. I do not see any commenters. Thank you.
That's so sad. No Paul for our last meeting? All right. Maybe you thought it was at 6:30. Okay. Next up,
Wait.
What? Oh. Sorry. Yeah. Is it okay? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Michael Boyer, 29-year resident, Sammamish. And I'm sorry I didn't put my name on the list. I was actually hoping Paul would talk. So I will echo what Mary said also. I know in the plan we have got to 2,100 housing. I do believe that is probably, we're probably going to use the clause that's in the statement that says these numbers don't preclude you from doing things differently. I mean, there's one sentence in there that says that. However, I was just thinking that maybe we could be more forthright in putting up a number beyond that if that's the intention. So I thank you for your time, and happy holidays.
Great, thank you. All right, next up we have executive session to review the performance of a public employee pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101G. We will come back at 6:30, and upon return, council may take action. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. Oh, we have a runner. Okay, Councilmember Stewart. Yeah, I think we're ready. I had a thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I move that based on a positive 2024 performance evaluation for the city manager, I move that the Sammamish City Manager's 2025 salary adjustment shall be a 6% COLA increase based on the rolling 4-year average for the Seattle-Tacoma Bellevue CPIU, consistent with the AFSCME union contract, effective January 1, 2025.
Second. All right, moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to that?
I would. I just want to, I think I speak for the council when I say, Scott, thank you for a big year. As we've discussed, it's been a very big year, a very heavy, lots of heavy lifts, not the least of which was to round out the year with nothing less than a bomb cyclone, which I didn't know was a thing. But in all seriousness, thank you for all of the work and your leadership. Thank you for being there for our staff. Thank you for being there for our community, and for being there for us as the council. And we really appreciate all of your work. And hopefully we will have better financial times ahead and we can do even more. But we really appreciate your service, and we hope that you feel that reflected in our motion. Thank you.
All right. Did anyone else want to speak to that motion? All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. And Councilmember Stewart.
Great. I would also like to move that we adopt the city manager's proposed 2025 goals, subject to potential revision at the council's February retreat.
Second.
Hello? Oh, there we go. Moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to that one?
I think it speaks for itself.
All right. If no other hands, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you. And thank you so much, Scott. We love having you. Okay, consent calendar, I think we'll have, is Audrey starting the presentation? Awesome.
Correct. Thank you, Mayor. Just to, again, to help orient everyone about all the contracts that are on consent tonight, just want to make sure we're clear on what they are and what they're for, given this is the end of our biennium 2-year process, and we're about to start a new one. So Audrey, please take it away.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. I am Audrey Starcy, the Public Works Director for the record. I am joined this evening by Greg Samatillo, our Deputy Director of Public Works. Our department has 16 items on the consent calendar this evening. We're more than happy to answer any questions about any of those items. We have one project acceptance for the Southeast 24th Street sidewalk improvement project. So very excited that project came in on time and under budget. We also have two new contracts, and the remaining items are contract amendments for your consideration. And I'll try to go through the list. It is noted in the packet. There is a crosswalk item that you can follow along as well. But our first contract amendment is with H.W. Lochner. That is an extension only, so that we can close out the remaining project items list for the Issaquah Falls City Road project. And then we have 5 on-call contracts that are date extensions only. Most of these contracts are professional services contracts that help us support our day-to-day engineering operations. Those contracts are with KPG, Dowell, Atwell, which was formerly Blue Line, and Pace and Stantec. They do operate on an as-needed work order basis. So as the tasks come in, they are assigned to different divisions in the department and those funds accordingly. We also have 2 on-call contracts from the stormwater utility that are adding funding to those contracts, as well as date extensions. Those contracts are with OCI, Osborne Consulting, Inc., to support our stormwater engineering team. Those primary items come out of the 408 and 438 funds to support some of our capital projects, as well as ongoing programs. Another contract within the stormwater utility is GIS support with Herrera that helps us meet some of our NPDES stormwater permit obligations as a city. So that's an ongoing need, and we've asked for additional funding for that contract as well. All of these contracts are included, and their amounts are included in the 25-26 budget that was approved. Sorry, it's a long list here. Okay, then we have two contracts, separate contracts with PBS Engineering. One is an existing contract to complete the Pine Lake Creek Basin Plan in 2025. This effort began in 2023, and we have plans to present the final plan to council and the community in early 25. So that is to complete that work. The second contract with PBS Engineering is to complete the design phase for the George Davis Creek Passage project and storm improvement project, which we are very excited to complete design phase for that project, and construction is planned for 2026. Next, we have a King County Interlocal Agreement, or ILA, for ongoing water quality monitoring that King County assists us with throughout the city. And then finally, we have two new contracts for your consideration this evening. One is with Olympic Environmental Resources, or OER, to provide ongoing support for our recycling events throughout the year. The other contract is with PBS Engineering to begin design phase for the Issaquah Falls City Road flood mitigation project. We're very excited to get going on that project as well. And finally, we have one operational contract for your consideration. Most of those were approved last week, but we have one more, and it's with precision concrete cutting for sidewalk maintenance to mitigate trip hazards. So I believe that's all of the items. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Audrey. And the crosswalk was super helpful instead of trying to read each line item. Does anyone have any questions for Audrey or Greg before I entertain a motion to approve? All right, would anyone like to make that motion?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. And if there are no questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Awesome. Thank you so much, Audrey. And then next up, we have the storm update presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. And as we lead into this, I'd like to invite online Wendy Weicker from Republic Services to come and speak about what Republic has been doing in the storm before we get into our storm update piece. So I think if you'll bear with me just for a moment here while Wendy is promoted, she can kick us off.
I saw Wendy on the list earlier, but I do not see her currently.
All right. Well, in that case, if she jumps back on, we can, we will do a quick pivot here, and we will move, Krista, if you would, we'll move into the storm update. And as we bring this up and get it ready to go, Council, I just want to remind, when we were last here, we gave a brief update on where we were with storm response. We know a lot more now in terms of where we are and what we're doing, and we want to walk through this in part because we are still ongoing and we are nowhere near done. And so want to preface the storm update tonight with that understanding. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, because I know this has come up quite a bit, we did essentially declare the emergency as the storm was coming, and we did that by preparing our crews. We got all the equipment ready, portable generators, got all the chainsaws out and ready to go. We had all of our communication tools that the teams use, and they moved to standby status, and that is effectively an internal emergency order set by me. Next slide, please. So just recall that the first tree went down at 2 p.m. Tuesday the 19th. And by 7:45, we had multiple trees down. The council meeting had to be rescheduled because everybody lost power, including City Hall. And at 9, we had to pull our crews back to the Maintenance and Operations Center for their safety, except for medical assistance calls, which were required to cut a path through to get to places. The winds were higher than expected, and the gusts were pretty darn high. The entire city lost power and internet, which that's a new one, I think, for us collectively. And even worse, the cell networks were disrupted. And so it's reflective of Eastside Fire and Rescue reported over 750 calls in a 4-hour time period just in Sammamish, and I want to be clear about that part of it. And that includes down trees, down power lines, that kind of stuff, because people were trying to figure out where to place those calls. Next slide, please. We coordinated and communicated with both Eastside Fire and Rescue and our police throughout the event. We assisted East Side Fire and Rescue by clearing trees to allow for access. And I do want to shout out, and they're going to be embarrassed that I'm doing this, but Deputies Griert and Martin are chainsaw certified, and they got out there with their chainsaws and were out helping clear roads to help provide access into different neighborhoods. And so a huge shout out to those two, along with the rest of the police team that was out just making sure that we were as safe as we could be given the how damaging the storm was. Next slide, please. So this is one where this will give you an indication. By 3 a.m., and these are pictures, you can see the timestamps on the lower right corner of the screen. We had multiple roads blocked throughout the city. And some of them were fully blocked, some were partially blocked, but you can see right here, believe it or not, in the first picture, the light on the left is actually hanging lower than it normally is. It actually got partially knocked down and was still functioning at that time because it had battery power before it finally succumbed to going dark. So this just gives you an indicator of what we found when the crews were out at 3 a.m. trying to assess how bad it was and what they should be doing next. Next slide, please. So days 2 through 8, this gets us basically right up to Thanksgiving. We were doing assessments of all the other things that the city is responsible for, including stormwater ponds, creeks, guardrails, downed road signs. We were clearing down trees and debris along our priority routes where we could, bearing in mind that we were stuck a little bit by down power lines. We can't go in. It's not safe for our crews to go in and address trees that are on down power lines. Puget Sound Energy has to come do that. And you will see down here that Puget Sound Energy was a little hard to get a hold of through this time period, and that's something that we will be addressing with them moving forward. Could have been better. We had great collaboration with East Side Fire and Rescue and Sammamish Police Department. Our leadership team was meeting 3 times daily. First couple of days, we were starting at 6:30 in the morning to assess. We moved it up to a more reasonable hour once we got things a little more in place. But we were meeting to try to coordinate on all fronts. We had our Emergency Operations Center up and running, and we were coordinating with different agencies, with our neighboring partners, and with all of our crews and our employees. Next slide, please. Here's just a few pictures of some of the tremendous damage that was sustained throughout the community. I can't stress this enough. We have this all over the city. This is not just localized to one area. We had multiple areas where this happened, and these are just some of the pictures the crews took when they were out doing damage assessment and trying to assess what we needed to do and how bad the situation was. Next slide, please. These are our parks. We took some damage from our parks. Some of these is the reason the parks remains closed, because we have a lot of cleanup to do. But this is just an indicator of it wasn't just private property, but some of the city facilities also. And I'll get to this a little bit more in a couple more slides. Next slide, please. So these are all the public roadway response and cleanup resources that we have been using. So we have 17 maintenance workers, and that includes our parks team. They have been running 10-hour shifts, 5 days a week. We have 2 superintendents that are in charge of them, and we have 2 leads that help lead separate crews. And then we have support staff. And again, this is not the entire list, but this is the direct list. Those 17 folks are working their tails off, and they're out in rain, shine, or otherwise trying to get all this stuff done. We have 13 trucks, 2 excavators, 2 backhoes. It says 1 rented on there, but our backhoe had a mechanical issue, and we had to rent a second one. So we are trying to not slow down and continue to pick up debris and try to get rid of it. We have 1 chipper trailer, and then we actually used a snowplow to clear the roadway so that we could actually make them passable. And then we have multiple contracts that we are using for all the pieces that are on the screen right there. We're utilizing those. We've actually added a couple more. The debris management one is a contract we just added recently to try to help get the debris out of town as fast as possible so that we can fill up where we're stocking it up immediately. Next slide, please. So we are still doing damage assessment for city facilities. Some of these we don't know until we get everything cleared from the right-of-way, but we had some street trees that went down. That's not a big surprise given the rest of the community, but we have to try to figure out what to do about those. We have some fence sections around rights-of-way and ponds that got damaged by trees. We had a traffic signal basically get demolished, 35 street signs, 260 plus feet of guardrail, and that is not cheap. That alone is going to somewhere between 100 and 150,000 to replace all of those. And those are the important ones so that when you're coming around curves and it's keeping people safe when you're out driving on the road. We had a generator get stolen from that was running a street light in the middle of the day. And then we've had some equipment damage that requires replacement. So these are just some of the impacts to the city so far. Next slide, please. The My Sammamish app and on the website has been a great resource to the extent that we had 343 requests in basically a less than 2-week period from the storm. And we are trying to address all of them that we can. We've got them all in the system. We're going out and systematically trying to get to those with the understanding that we're trying to clear the rights of way first and foremost. And one of the bigger reasons that we need to do this is if by chance there is a snow or an ice event, we cannot use the snow plows if we don't know that the rights of way are cleared. So this is really imperative for getting particularly our snow plow priority routes cleared of debris so that we are ready and able for the next storm that potentially might come. Anecdotally, we also had spill response from transformers that went down. There was fluid that came out of those that needed to be cleaned up. Next slide, please. We also ran a warming center for 12 hours a day for, I think, 7 or 8 days. I lost track of time somewhere in there. But first couple of days, we had about 400 people plus per day. We utilized every resource we could that wasn't bolted down to make space for all of our residents to come in. We provided what we could, which is water, coffee, hot cocoa, and I believe we bought the city out of hot cocoa more than once. It was very popular, and our amazing staff even thought of the idea of bringing in a couple food trucks to help folks out when there wasn't warm food really available here in town until power got restored to our commercial areas. We had game puzzles. We had the high school robotics team come in and engage and entertain youth. Which was amazing. We had attendees charge everything under the sun, including battery packs, medical equipment, and other things. We had some of our circuits blow as a result of it, and so we had to gently remind to try not to plug into another plug-in to another plug-in to another plug-in, which very creative from the community. Because our Wi-Fi was up and working, because we had a generator, we were able to provide access for those. Even when the building was closed, the Wi-Fi was available outside City Hall, and folks were utilizing it. So that was a positive. And then our staff, and this is part of what you're going to be seeing when we get down to sort of costs overall, volunteered for the evenings and the weekend shifts to make sure that we could stay open late enough to try to serve the community. So I do want to say a huge thank you to those staff that were involved in that. It was a great team effort, and I think everybody thought it was really positive to be able to provide that and engage with our community in that way. I think everyone felt that they felt really good about being able to provide that. So I'm very thankful for them. Next slide, please. So just a reminder, I did sign an emergency declaration, but I want to be clear about what that does. It really gives me power to respond more quickly during a storm, and it allows us to bring in additional supplies, equipment, and services as fast as possible, and to contract quickly to be able to bring in. The debris management is one, and the renting of the backhoes is another prime example of that. We are currently and continue to work with the state and federal government to declare the emergency. And I believe we have FEMA folks coming out here in the next few days to do an assessment. And so we have our fingers crossed that we will be able to reimburse some of our costs because this is going to be an expensive proposition. Next slide, please. So current status. We're still on emergency status with our crews. We're on 5 days a week, 10-hour shifts. All roads are passable, and that's a big credit to the crews, particularly on Beaver Lake Drive, which was really hit hard. I think we only just cleared that in the last day or so. We continue to clear and sometimes re-clear our priority routes. Focusing on curb to curb, not just for passable. Again, this is to make us snow and ice available. If we don't know what's under there, then we just can't do it because it'll wreck the equipment. We estimate another 2 to 3 weeks at least for clearing just the rights of way before we move a little farther out into city property and including and particularly into our parks. I want to be clear about this. I've asked and directed our park staff to help out in the rights of way to make sure that all of our roads are passable so they cannot go and work in the parks. We've got at least 300 trees down in parks throughout the city, along with trees that are dangerous that probably need to come down. We have not been able to not only do the assessments, but to actually get in and start working. That's going to be a little while still. So there are some parks that are open. We encourage folks to use those. The ones that you do not see on the list, please do not go in because they are not safe and we can't guarantee folks' safety when they go in there. We continue to use some parking lots for debris management. Again, this is a challenge for us because there has to be a place for us to store it out of the way and for the big trucks to come in to load up to remove the debris. So we have been using Ebright parking lot, East Sammamish Park parking lot, and Beaver Lake ball fields, and we will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. So with apologies, we need those parking lots and we cannot open those parks until we have all this cleared out. And we're still inspecting our city assets. We have brought in a drone contract to help us look at some of our downstream, if you will, components and pieces. The city also owns property that is undeveloped that we have to also take a look at just to make sure that we're not missing anything. And so we are deploying those to help us with that. Next slide, please. I want to commend our community development team for doing a quick pivot and not only coming up with an abbreviated and quicker way to try to get permits through the process. They also came up with the idea of staffing the front desk all day, every day through the end of this week to give to help folks that otherwise would never come in for a permit understand what needs to happen and how to do it so that we can move things through faster. We were doing expedited permitting for damaged buildings and trees because we know those things need to get done as soon as possible. We are also encouraging customers to report their damages to King County because that will help with our disaster cost designation. And just what we've seen so far, we've had 47 walk-in customers, which folks will know is fairly rare for City Hall these days. We've had 74 tree submittals through the online portion, had 39 permit applications for storm damage for homes, garages, etc. And we've managed to do 17 storm damage assessments so far by building inspectors. And I know the inspectors don't get called out until they're really ready to go and do the final sign-off. So we were trying to get out to those as soon as possible. So again, asking for everyone's patience as the team is trying to process these as fast as possible while also providing customer service to our current applicants in the process. Next slide, please. So this is what we've submitted to FEMA so far. This is our rough estimate costs. And I would expect these to grow over time as the storm response goes longer. One of the reasons that I want to share this out is this is by far the abnormal for what I'm now calling a storm response, not just snow and ice. And this is well above and beyond what we would be spending for a snow event generally. And so this is where that budget contract with council that we've been talking about, we will need to come back to you at some point during the biennium to amend the budget to reflect this, because we're not going to have enough to get through the biennium to respond to the storms that we know are coming. So also, this stuff is really expensive. And this storm that is, I know we've had storms that have knocked out power for multiple days, but we've never had a storm, I don't believe, that is this damaging collectively for the city in the time that the city has been in existence. There may have been prior to 25 years ago, but my understanding is this is the doozy of them all. So this is hopefully the aberration and not the norm, but just want to give folks an understanding of what we're estimating so far. Next slide, please. I asked the team to give a rough estimation of how much we've removed and what does that really mean. And so we've removed about 900 cubic yards of debris to date. That is filling council chambers, floor to ceiling, side to side is about 850 cubic yards. So they've done a council chambers worth. And it's about 50 cubic yards per truck when they remove it. So every truck trip. So if we've done 900, you can do the math and figure out how many truck trips that has taken. So again, this is not a fast process, but they are moving with all due haste. Again, we haven't started debris removal in parks because we've been focused on the right-of-way, so there will be more. Next slide, please. Like I said, we are coordinating, we are continuing to report out, and we are part of the process and working with our neighbors. Because this storm was very localized in a very strange way, we are continuing to work with our immediate neighbors because we were the ones that were hit the hardest. Next slide, please. So once everyone got power, they could see all the great things that we were posting out on the city's website and social media. We've had a tremendous increase post-storm. As you can see on here, and I really want to thank our one-person communications show for doing a great job during this, and for the teams to provide her all the information necessary to report this out. But it just goes to show that people are paying attention when it's needed. So I think that's a real positive. And I just want to say a thank you to the community. We've seen some very nice messages on there, and we really do appreciate, the teams really appreciate hearing from the community, especially on positive responses. Next slide, please. So moving forward, continued debris management, repairs at parks are going to continue on. Like I said, 300 down trees, 300 feet of damaged fencing. And we are developing after-action reports and setting up subcommittees to address improvements. Even though I will say I thought the team did an amazing job, we always have room for improvements. Hopefully we're even more prepared for the next one and can continue to pivot where needed and when needed. Next slide, please. So lessons learned. Actually, would you mind going back one slide, Krista? I think this is the right place to talk about this, and I'm going to pull up the right email when I do it. We just found out before the meeting, we have finalized a storm debris collection event for the community this Saturday morning from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And this is all over our website already, by the way, so just, you don't have to write it down. 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Beaver Lake Ball Fields. I will say that we, in all likelihood, will have to turn people away. So I would encourage folks to try to get there early if you can. One of the pieces I want to be really clear about, in order for us to put this on and provide a space for this debris cleanup to happen for the community, we had to stop using that for 4 days for our own debris cleanup in order to clear it, prep it, do the event, and then clean it up again to then go back to using it for city purposes. So, but we think this is important and really are excited to have the Republic folks, and this is where Wendy from Republic was also going to share this out, come in and provide this for the community. You can find that on our storm debris website as well. And so encourage folks again to come in. This is all over our social media and Facebook and the city's webpage. So really want to thank the Public Works crews for getting that off the ground. Thanks, Krista. Next slide, please. All right, lessons learned, always room for improvement, particularly coordination with PSE. We did not know where they were working, and they didn't ask us what our needs and priorities were when they came into town. We actually had somebody driving around trying to find where their trucks were so that we could clear the roads behind them and be as efficient as possible. That's an opportunity for improvement. Personal preparedness, I think we collectively in the community have learned that 2 weeks ready, and this stuff is again on our website. There's all kinds of materials, including this, what you see on the right-hand side of the screen, about having your materials ready to go and being prepared for that. As we've seen, when the entire community is without power, it's not like you can go to a neighbor's house. So again, we're going to continue to push communications on this throughout the year. We found out our current emergency operations center is not compatible with a warming center because it turned out to be a great workspace for folks, and that was fantastic, and we needed all the space we could get. However, it's not really functional for trying to run an operations center out of there and open it up. And we feel like City Hall is an important community asset that needs to be available when it's needed. So we'll be looking at what we can do about that. We also had an opportunity to improve our internal and external communications, and we are reviewing that and finding new ways to communicate things out in the moment. And also community expectations about what the city does and does not do and can and can't do. We had a lot of questions about that on all kinds of fronts, and we continue to try to educate about that and understand that not everyone is familiar with government and how it works, and that's okay. And so we'll continue to try to communicate those things out as we go, and we can all collectively learn. Next slide, please. And finally, I just want to say thank you. I'm going to start off by saying thank you to council for being very supportive throughout all of this. Recognizing that we are delaying projects and things here that we're working on in order to respond to the community's needs. Really want to thank the maintenance crews who were working 24 hours a day for the first few days, and then we pivoted down to something where we weren't burning them out completely, and it was manageable moving forward. All the staff at the warming center, our permit and inspection staff, our police who continue to be supportive and be out in the community throughout, and Eastside Fire and Rescue who responded through the darkest parts of the storm. And finally, really want to thank the community for their resiliency. Everyone at the warming center was so supportive of each other and really were sharing space, some very tight space at times, and sharing their charging ports. And really, it was a great opportunity to really see community in action, and it was really amazing all the way around. So I really want to thank the community for that. And hopefully we don't get a storm like this again anytime soon. So with that, I want to say thank you. Apologize, this was a little long, but I think this is really important. We will put this presentation again up on the website so folks can take a look at it. And again, we also got a lot of pictures from folks out in the community. Those have been amazing. We have those available if anyone wants to take a look at those. But with that, I will wrap and ask if there are any questions.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Deputy Mayor Howe?
Thank you, Scott. And I'm excited that you're going to be putting that up on the website. I think that's really helpful. You do ask a question. You say, we don't think that the public understands what the government does and does not do for them, but we don't actually answer that question. And so that'd be one thing that I don't know the best way to accomplish that, but that I can't help but notice that. The other thing I was going to ask you about is the coordination with some of the other properties and organizations, like the Y, the library, Boys and Girls Club, Central, for example, and wondered, what kind of connection did you have with them? Did they provide any assistance? I know that when I was here, the library folks came over to just kind of check in and to let people know that, that they were up and running. I had a member of the public that was saying, well, why can't I go to the Y? Well, I don't think they have power either. So, but I also didn't know the status of, did they have a generator? And, how soon were they up and running in terms of a place for people to go? So if there was some more detail around that, that'd be really helpful.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Howe. And to answer your question, yes, we are absolutely working on those pieces. The other part of that is no, the YMCA does not have a generator. I think that's part of the conversation. I think the other part of that is for the size of staff that we have, one of the reasons the warming center here worked is that we were in our own building and people could change out and get work done and then come back and be a part of it. Once we go offsite, it gets a little more challenging, but that's one of the pieces that we want to try to work on. We're looking at as part of the, you heard Mark Cameron present on the next step on the sheltering piece is finding out where those community partners are and how we can engage them. I think when the power's out, that makes it a little bit more challenging. Generators require constant maintenance, and they're expensive to purchase to run a building of this size or the size of the Y. So I think those are all pieces that we're continuing to work on to try to find the right path there.
Did they do outreach to you? Did anyone from like Central do any outreach to you that you're aware of?
I'd have to go back and check the team, Deputy Mayor. I can't answer that right off the top of my head.
Okay, that would be just kind of completing the circuit. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Scott, just a quick question about FEMA and they're coming out. Does the city have a certain dollar threshold they have to meet in order to receive FEMA care? I know the county have to get to something like 10.5 million or something.
It's a complicated gymnastics exercise that only the federal government can come up with. But the short version is that we collectively as a county had to reach a threshold, and then we collectively as a state had to reach a threshold of estimated costs. And then part of what FEMA does is they come out and try to verify and validate those costs as part of the process. So we have been told, and I want to be honest about this, that sometimes FEMA takes up to 8 to 9 months to get all the way through that process because, again, they're, in this instance, for what they do for this, it's on the back end of reimbursement. So no matter what, you're expending everything up front, and then you are hopeful that you get some reimbursement down the road. It's a continual process, but, it's very important to try to do everything we can right now to be in the best position to hopefully get some reimbursement down the road.
Okay, thank you. And just to council, I watched the King County Committee of the Whole meeting. It was very interesting, kind of to get a bigger picture, a broader picture of what the county was going through and the kind of issues that they're trying to work through and lessons learned. They were talking about PCERN radios, that type of thing, and how to communicate between agencies when they don't have internet, when they don't have cell phone connections, and all their technology died. And how do they go back to either old school technology or however it is to make everything continue to happen? So it was a very interesting meeting. I encourage the public to watch it because you get that bigger regional picture of how very badly our region was hit. And it was said in that meeting that we were hit by easterly winds this time when we were normally hit by, I think, westerly winds, and that's what created so much of the damage. That's why trees were taken down by their root ball, and we had that catastrophic damage, and that's not something we normally experience. So it was really worth watching. It's like an hour and 45 minutes. So anyway, thank you, Scott.
Yep. Thank you, Councilmember. Along those lines, really quickly, I will say, we're part of the King County Radio Network. We do have radios that connect directly. We have our own channel, but we can connect directly with King County and with Eastside Fire and Rescue and the broader King County Police. So that interaction was going on during the storm, but there's always room for improvement there.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Scott, for the presentation. Council has received negative feedback from the community for our storm response, not, just a few. And so I really appreciate having this slide deck. In fact, yesterday I sent one out because somebody was saying that the response was inadequate. I think it's really important for us to have this just to send out so people understand exactly the magnitude of this event. So thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And I know we spoke in our one-on-one, but just for the public to be aware, I think following up with the cell phone providers and internet providers is also important. While I do think this was an incredibly large storm, we had a similar storm back in 2006. Maybe not quite as powerful, but still took out a lot of trees, a lot of power. We were out of power for about a week. And cell phone service continued to work back then. And so really understanding why it worked then and not now, and is there anything we can do to sort of bolster the cell phone networks, the internet, and if not, what should we be communicating to the community in order to have some sort of communications? Because I think that was the hardest part, is people didn't know what to do. They couldn't text or phone or get onto the internet, so there was no way to understand that City Hall was open for some people, right? So I think that's a really important follow-up for us to figure out what that is. I was also wondering if we, at any point, would engage, we used to have anyway, a program where our residents would get certified for emergency management, the CERT. And I know that they're all like radios and things like that. So if that's something that we should add to our, folks who could potentially help us out, especially with communications, I think that would be an interesting thing to explore for those folks who took training and I think kind of signed up for helping us out in case of emergency. And then I had one other question, which is, can we get chainsaw certified?
I didn't know you could do that.
I want to do that.
Of course you can. I'm certified. There's a test.
I'm cool with that. So anyway, sign me up, Scott.
I'll put that on the list, Councilmember.
Please don't. Yeah. The 7 of us with chainsaws. Councilmember Gupta.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you to staff for this response. I know it's been a lot, and it continues to be a lot. So thank you for everything that you've done. Councilmember Stewart sort of asked this already, but I will just say I think communication was the biggest piece. I think a lot of the frustration that we heard was because people didn't know what was going on, and like you said, part of that is just not understanding maybe what the city's role is, but I'm wondering if we have any. I know you mentioned on lessons learned, improving internal and external communications. Obviously, that's difficult if there's no power, no internet, and no cell service. I'm wondering if we have any answers now, or if we know what that looks like in the future.
Thank you, Councilmember. Obviously, that's one of the bigger pieces, is how do you communicate with people? And this is where the 2 weeks ready piece comes in so important, is if our generator had failed for some reason, none of that would have been viable, and then we all would have been literally in the dark. So that is a piece that we're definitely looking at as part of our after action. The piece with the cell phone providers is also definitely on the list to try to understand, what happened this time that was different than other times, because generally the cell service works just fine, even if you don't have power. And it's a question of keeping your phone charged up, but that wasn't the case here. And so I think this is also in part why the keeping the Emergency Operations Center on this floor is not viable, because I think one of those pieces probably has to be that City Hall will be a warming or a center of refuge, if you will, under any scenario. And if that's the case, then we have to try to do something a little bit different in order to accommodate that. And so I think both of those pieces are relevant and pertinent.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Thank you, Scott, so much for the presentation, and to all the staff. I know, like you said, it's going to be carrying on for months, so really appreciate it. Okay, old business. I don't know if David, you just appeared. Hello, okay. Our proposed ordinance for amending Title 21 of our municipal code.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. David Pyle, Department of Community Development. With me this evening, I have Jeff Arango of Framework, who's our project consultant, as well as Evan Fisher from the Department of Community Development, who is our senior management analyst. This evening is a follow-up, or this topic is a follow-on from the December 3rd public hearing, where you opened and closed the public hearing and considered the packet of code amendments to implement the city's 2024 comprehensive plan. There was some discussion around the rezoning criteria, partially in response to public comment, also in response to council inquiry on the topic. We went ahead and modified the criteria and presented it to the council again in the agenda bill for this evening. We do have a very short, I think 2 or 3 slide presentation for you, and then we will open it up to you for further deliberation and a potential motion. Jeff?
Great, thank you, David. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. Jeff Arango with Framework, and we just have a couple of brief slides. Just wanted to say, before I go through this, appreciate the comments earlier in the meeting, and glad that we hit the mark in their eyes in terms of these updates. So appreciate their commentary and input. So this is the rezone criteria, which was in your packet, and I will just note some of the updates that are listed on the right-hand side. So the first is related to the presence of critical areas. Rather than just having a blanket statement about properties being encumbered, we tried to further define that and came up with a standard, both of which would have to be met, that the property is not more than 50% encumbered by critical areas, and it has an area that's outside of critical areas and buffers that is equal to the standard lot size for each district. And we have included a table there on the left-hand side to show what would be required for square footage or acreage. Following consultation with the Public Works Department, we've removed the criteria related to the drainage and stormwater, feeling that that could be addressed through any development application and, may be difficult to discern prior to an application being submitted for development. Confirmed that they may only upzone one step in the hierarchy. So if you were in R4, you could go to R6. If you were in R6, you could go to R8. So on and so forth. And the property must be adjacent to a parcel that is in one of the higher zones, not necessarily the one that is being requested, but one that is higher than the zone that they're currently in. And it could be the next highest or even more so than that. So I think with these updates, the criteria are very prescriptive, easy to interpret, both for applicants and for the hearing examiner. And so we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, but the recommended motion you can see here on the screen. And I don't know if David has anything to add, but if not, I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff and David. Council questions?
You have questions?
Councilmember Gupta?
Yeah, thank you. Last week, staff had mentioned that the reason for what was then criteria 4 about the critical areas was proposed because staff had concerns about the effects of more intense development on critical areas. With this amended language, does staff feel more comfortable?
Yes, we do. We feel that the assurance that the property has buildable area on it would not then cause a rezone. So part of the concern is founded in the frequent statement that we hear from property owners where if we granted them a rezone to a higher density and then they were not able to achieve the vision they had for the property, that they would then come back to us and say, well, you gave me a rezone, why can't I build this on it? So what this does is it provides that assurance, and that's a fairly common thing. We do hear that a lot. It's something like that, right? You gave me a variance, you gave me this, why can't I do this? So this provides that assurance that there is adequate space for them to build on the property, and we won't be presented with some form of a challenge, whether it be legal or just a challenge in general.
Do we have any sense of how many properties this might affect in the city?
The item number 4 or the rezone in general?
The rezone in general.
We don't. It's any area that would be adjacent to a zone of higher intensity. I'm guessing there are a few hundred potential parcels around the city. However, you also have to show adequacy or that there is a future water or sewer connection down the line, which is not always the case. You have to want to do it as well. So, it has to be a host of reasons that would result in something like this happening. I'm guessing we'll start off with a few in 25, leading up to possibly a dozen, maybe at the peak in a year, which is not a lot. It's something, but it's not a lot. Also consider that we are seeing significant density increases through middle housing. And that's something given to us by way of HB 1220 or 1110, excuse me. Wrong. So I just want to point that out.
Since you brought it up, do you have a sense of how many properties would be affected by the item number 4, the critical areas piece?
Fewer. We don't have. It's hard to say because unless you actually laid out the actual critical areas on the ground and did a critical areas report and surveyed in the boundaries, we don't really know the square footage that remains.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart?
If there are no questions, I'm ready to make a motion.
Any other questions, council, before a motion? All right, go for it.
Okay. I move to adopt the amendments to Title 21 of the Sammamish Municipal Code as presented in Exhibit 1 to implement the 2024 Comprehensive Plan and changes to state law.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to that?
No. Thank you.
Okay, all right. If no one comments on the motion, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of ordinance 2024-578, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you for making this clear. Sorry I could not understand last week, so really appreciate you all being back.
So I also want to just take a minute and thank you all for all the support throughout this comprehensive plan update, including the development regulations process. It's been a long road. We started back in 2019. It's been about 5 years we've been working on this, and really appreciate all of the work and thoughtfulness and the questions and the late nights reading through Convio, providing comments on the comprehensive plan and conversations we've had. And, we're here to continue to do more planning work. I really appreciate the forward-thinking approach that this council is taking in looking to the future with the city. And we have a lot of work ahead of us, and we're here to continue to work on it. And if you ever have any questions about the comp plan, about the development regs, or a community member does, feel free to reach out by way of Scott directly to me. We're here to help and navigate the sort of the changes as we go forward. So thank you. Really appreciate everything you've done.
Great. I hope you get a vacation now. All right. Thank you so much, Jeff and Evan. Okay, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. I want to take a quick moment to say thank you to council for all your leadership. I want to echo what David has said. We've done some heavy lifts this year, and I think the staff has been excited to be able to get this kind of stuff through the process and out the door. And so I want to thank council for their leadership and your continued engagement in some of these big pieces that we've been moving forward. And there's excitement about what's to come as well. So thank you for that. Really quickly, this Friday is Frosty Fest. At the Central Washington building. It's from Friday from 4 to 7 p.m. We hope to have everyone come out and join us there. Since this is the last last council meeting of 2024, I want to remind folks that City Hall is closed December 24th, 25th, 31st and January 1st. So Tuesday and Wednesday of those 2 weeks, we will be open the rest of those days, and there will be staff here, and City Hall will be open. But I just want to remind that as we move into the holidays, that a lot of staff will be taking vacation, and I've been encouraging folks to do so. But obviously we will still have folks around and able to respond to any needs that come up. And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you so much.
All right, council, does anyone have any announcements or reports to give? Councilmember Lamb?
So we have an email from SCA Sound Cities about sending a delegate to the North Caucus meeting. It happens this Friday. I don't know who can go. It's at 1 o'clock on Friday. Deputy Mayor Howe? I see your hand up. Okay.
Deputy
Thank
Mayor
you.
Howe, for the record, thank you.
I also have a Public Issues Committee meeting on Wednesday. I sent out the agenda, and I have a solid waste meeting on Friday, and I will send out the agenda for that.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, we have an Eastside Fire and Rescue meeting on Thursday. I shared the agenda. I think the one thing of note was the legislative agenda, the proposed legislative agenda. So if anybody has any questions or comments on that, please let us know by end of day tomorrow, please. So.
And did you finish the chief's evaluation form? I know we saw an email.
Yeah, I
think you
sent one
both
in. I don't know if you
did.
did, Karen, but I did. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
And we'll be discussing that in executive session at the meeting. But.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Can I say happy holidays?
Sure.
Awesome.
All righty. Yes, happy holidays to all. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Good night, everybody.